All right, hello everybody, and welcome to our nutrition course here at Lady Strong Fitness. We have designed this course to be able to give a broader understanding of all things nutrition, and each topic is going to build upon it itself. And in this first video, we're going to be talking about food groups and meal planning, because as we go into calories and macros and gut health and specific requirements for different populations, we first need to understand where all of our nutrients are coming from and the benefits that are provided to us. So that is why it has been discussed to have food groups and meal planning be our first level. And this is going to fall a little bit under the category of intuitive eating as well. So let's dive into it. The first thing when it comes to food groups is understanding what they are and what their serving sizes are. We have grains, fruits, vegetables, dairy, protein, and fats. Grains is traditionally going to be 3/4 of a cup, and it's going to be measured more often than not while it's already cooked. Oatmeal is going to be one of the grains that you would measure when it's dry, but rice and pasta would be items that are going to be weighed when they are cooked. When it comes to bread, we're looking at one slice would be a serving. In terms of fruit, it would be 1 cup or one piece. Something like raspberries and strawberries would be measured as a cup, and then something as a banana or an apple would be measured as one item. In terms of vegetables, the same thing applies as fruits. We're looking at 1 cup or one piece. In terms of dairy, whether it is going to be milk, it's going to be measured in ounces, traditionally 8 ounces. And then something such as cheese would end up being about 1/4 of a cup. For protein, it's traditionally going to be 4 ounces. And then in terms of fats, depending on what the form is, if it is something that is a nut or a seed, traditionally you're looking at about 1/4 of a cup or 1 ounce. In terms of olive oils and coconut oil, that's going to be 1 tablespoon. And then for almond butters and peanut butters, that'll be 2 tablespoons. Now, the requirements for each group of people is going to be dependent on a few factors: your activity level, your age, your gender, and different medical concerns will all dictate how many servings that you need of each one of these food groups. The basic and traditional form, though, would end up being as follows. You're looking about 3 to 4 servings of grains, proteins, and veggies. And that's why when every single meal comes about, we always want to think, what is my protein? And then what is my grain? And then adding either a fruit or a vegetable to it. Then we're looking at about 2 to 3 servings of fruit, about 2 to 3 servings of dairy, again, dependent on person to person, and then 2 to 3 servings of fats, which we'll discuss on how we start to add in the dairy and the healthy fats. It's just the cherry on top, rather than that being the primary focal point of a meal. Now, the next one is different recommended food group or different recommended foods for each one of these categories. I want to point out here that there is no such thing as a bad food. We don't want to villainize anything. And a lot of the videos that we end up seeing on social media create a lot of fear mongering in order for them to get more followers or to get more views on a video. When in reality, foods are there to provide certain fuel to our bodies, and there are different foods that will provide a better quality. We can also think about, what did I just do and what am I about to do to help to fuel ourselves as well, and picking foods that will help to choose that fuel source to us. So even though these are ones recommended based off of the quality and the most nutrients provided to you, that's not to say that these are the only ones. Let's dive into it. In terms of grains and starches, whole grain is going to end up providing us more fiber and fullness to our diets. Things such as the oatmeal, granola, brown rice, whole wheat bread are going to provide very rich sources of fiber and nutrients to us, and they're going to be low GI. And that's why potatoes and sweet potatoes and quinoa will fall into that category as well. They are very low GI, they break down slower, and they keep us fuller longer while providing us with those full fiber sources. And then in terms of making sure it has the right amount of fiber, such as on bread, you'd want to make sure that it has at least 3 grams of fiber to it, since that's the full component of a fiber grain. Now, the next one that we're looking at is going to be fruit. While there is no such thing as a bad fruit, we technically want to focus more on berries because they have the different fiber in it, and they also have a greater source of antioxidants and nutrients. We always want to think that the more colorful that something is, the more value that's going to provide it to us. But we can also look at kiwi, bananas, apples, grapes, and tangerines because of their effects on our digestive system as well. In terms of vegetables, the same thing is that there is no such thing as a bad vegetable, but we want to look at the vegetables as what's going to sit better within our stomachs. And the biggest thing in the vegetables that I provided are ones that are going to cause less gas within the body. So zucchini, peppers, green beans, asparagus, spinach, and cucumbers, in addition to kale and spinach, will be the best sources that aren't going to create too much indigestion within the body, whereas Brussels sprouts and broccoli are really great choices, but sometimes they can end up causing more gas within our stomachs. Now, in terms of protein, I would try to go into the order of what's going to be the best source of protein into not having as much protein quality, but still recognizing that these sources are viewed as a protein because of how much is involved in their portion sizes. Now, chicken, ground turkey, eggs, and egg whites are going to provide some of the best sources of protein to our bodies, in addition with the ground beef and steak. And it's great to have a different variety to it, but those are the ones that are going to be readily utilized by our bodies. But other ones that are going to be solely just a protein are going to have a higher source of protein will end up being Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, chicken sausage. Now, in looking at those packages, we want to make sure that those have about 15 to 20 grams of protein for their serving sizes. In terms of Greek yogurt, I traditionally will recommend the Ratio brand or Sig's, or I'll recommend Too Good or the Chobani Zero because they have a greater amount of protein in them based off of their macros. Same thing with cottage cheese and chicken sausage, just making sure that it has the right ratio of protein on the back of it. In terms of salmon, it's going to be an excellent source of protein, but also a great source of those omega-3 fatty acids. And then tofu, tempeh, and seitan for a couple of vegan and vegetarian options as well. In terms of dairy, we are looking at those milk sources. So when we have those dairy products, yes, we want to take into consideration somebody who has those lactose intolerance. And that's where we can see more of those oat milks and almond milks coming into play. But we may still see the need to supplement with calcium and iron in these situations. But for milk products, we're looking at that almond milk, cheese, yogurt, cottage cheese, and sour cream. And they have a protein to it, but a lot of the dairy products that we see are going to be considered to have a higher amount of fat and just contain protein as well. Now, in terms of fats, we want to have fats within our diets. We want to have those healthy fats within our diets. So we're looking at avocado, olive oil, coconut oil, almond butter, peanut butter, different nuts and seeds to help to provide us with those nutrients. And they are very dense with those calories. And so it can help us to feel fuller longer, as well as helping out with our brain cognition. It helps out with our overall mood. And it also is going to help out with our hormonal function as we get older as well. Now, how this plays into the different foods is, again, there's no such thing as a bad food. It's just starting to recognize what is going to be the primary makeup of that food. So for example, we would want to recognize that I can have this, but what's going to provide a better fuel source to me in this current moment? So this is why I recommend to say to yourself, it's not that you can't have that, it's that there's something else that's better for me right now. And the example that I traditionally will use for this is going to be a donut. Most people will look at a donut and say, I can't have that, or that's bad for me. And the reality of it is that it is a carbohydrate that breaks down fairly quickly. It has a very high GI level, so it's absorbed almost immediately within the body. And for that reason, when we have a donut for breakfast, we'll find that we're going to be hungry again in another hour. So a donut will traditionally have like 46 grams of carbohydrates to it, maybe about 6 to 10 grams of fat, and then have about 4 grams of protein to it. Whereas if we have something like oatmeal, for that same amount of carbohydrates, we will be fuller longer and it will break down slower and provide our blood sugar levels to be more even. Now, it's not to say that the donut is necessarily bad for you. It's just that something else is going to provide a better component to it. That donut might actually be something that's very good to have before a workout. It's going to be used almost immediately by the body to help with that immediate carbohydrate source. And then your body will get that greater use of carbohydrates. Now, again, there's still better carbohydrates that we can consume before a workout that will break down quickly and provide more nutrients to us. But it's recognizing something for what it is and choosing what's going to provide a greater benefit to us for what we're about to do. Now, with that being said, each one of the food groups has a benefit to it. And this is why going into a fad diet or going into a very specific diet, we want to stay away from ones that are going to cut out a certain food group unless we have a medical condition that is required for. So the benefits to each one of the food groups are all there for a reason because of what they provide to your body. Now, grains and carbohydrates in general, they get a very bad rap, but they are the most readily utilized source of fuel within your body. And that's why we need them for overall just even brain functioning. Grains are also going to provide a lot of fiber to our body. When they're whole grain sources, they are going to provide a lot of fullness. They're going to help out with our blood sugar levels, and it's going to help out with our overall use of vitamins and minerals as well. Now, going into fruit, fruit can sometimes get a bad rep because of its sugar content, but fruit has fiber in it to help to break down the sugar. And it's going to have so many antioxidants to it and so many vitamins and minerals that we want to consume those 2 to 3 servings of fruit every single day. It's also going to be really great for your skin as well. In terms of vegetables, vegetables are one of the best things that you can consume for yourself. And again, they have a great source of fiber, a great source of vitamins and minerals, but they're also going to help your overall mood, brain cognition, and they're also associated with a reduced risk of disease. And even though they have those green supplements out there, we want to make sure that we are consuming our vegetables because those are going to provide the best sources to us rather than relying on a supplement for that. As we continue into here, especially as we talk about protein, we want to remember that a supplement is exactly what it says. It is there to supplement what you are deficient in. It is not there to replace. So we want to get everything from those fuel sources, which is why leading us into our protein, we want to get our protein from food. The supplement is just there if we find that we are deficient in that protein consumption. So when we are consuming that protein, it's going to be very helpful for, yes, building lean muscle and maintaining lean muscle, but it's also going to help out with your fullness. It's also going to help out with regulating your blood sugar levels as well. And that's why we also want to have protein with every single meal because it will help with that. Now, in terms of dairy, we want to include that calcium within our body. And certain dairy products are also going to help out with our gut biome as well. So it helps out with the absorption of vitamin D, as well as containing the calcium and potassium that we need for our bones. Now, the next one is going to be fats. And as we get older, we need more healthy fats within our diet. And more people that have that are diabetic or have an autoimmune disorder or are going through menopause or postmenopausal, we find that they need more healthy fats within their diets. And fats are not only beneficial for reducing inflammation, and it's also going to be helpful for your brain cognition, but it also helps out with hormone regulation within your body. So we also see a higher fat content for a lot of women that have PCOS as well. So moving forward into this, again, this order can be a little bit different based off of different medical concerns or different dietary restrictions. But traditionally, how we would end up planning our meals is selecting a protein first, then a grain or a starch, followed by fruits and vegetables. And then our fats and our dairies are going to be just that last final component to add some flair to our meals. Now, the example that I wanted to provide here was the yogurt bowl example. And I will continue to build off of this and how this looks in our future slides. But we can see that the first protein that I selected was going to be Greek yogurt. Remember, sticking with ones that have a higher protein source to it. Then we would add in the granola for our grain, our berries to get our rich antioxidants and additional fiber. And then if we needed that extra fat, especially if you need more calories, we can add that almond butter on top as well. You always want to think about what's going to help you to maintain your fullness, what's going to help out with your blood sugar levels, and then what nutrients is it providing to your body as well. Now, for our next one, when organizing your meals, that was an example for just one meal, but when organizing it, the first one is how many meals are you going to consume a day? Traditionally, we want to consume about 3 to 4. So we would pick 4 different proteins, and then we can pick 4 different grains, and then we can start to think which ones are going to contain fruits and vegetables, and then what are the fats and the dairies that we're going to put on that as well. And this allows you to be able to structure your meals. If you are somebody that you want to log your food and you're planning it that way, the first thing that you would log would be the proteins that you're going to eat. Then you would add in the grains and the starches that you're going to eat, and then add in those fruits and vegetables, and then those fats. And then from there, in order to meet a certain calorie amount or a certain macro amount, we would just go in and start to make adjustments to the portion sizes to meet what our energy requirements are for our bodies. Now, another consideration here is when you're organizing your meals is what needs to be prepped, what can be made at home, what needs to be taken with you, and if it needs to be eaten hot or cold. So in a situation where I know that I'm going to be in the car, I may end up packing a pasta bowl with me, or I might end up packing a chicken wrap with me because I know that I'm not going to have access to a microwave. Or if I know that I'm going to my other job and I know there's a microwave, then I will maybe just prep my chicken, rice, and my veggies because I can reheat it very easily, but it's also very easy to prep for an entire week. So we take that into consideration as well. Now, this is a basic meal plan that we can look at that it goes through this process, having those 4 different meals. You can see that for each one of the meals, the first thing that we started with was going to be the protein. And then we went through and added in the grains, and then did either a fruit or a vegetable, and then added in that fat and that dairy on top. For this one, it also allows you to think about what meals that you enjoy and then how we can make those healthier versions of it. So for example, in our lunch option, we start off with our chicken, and then we can add in the protein chickpea pasta, which would end up being a carbohydrate that just has more protein to it. And then we would have our vegetables. We can also add in some cheddar cheese to it. We can do a light Italian dressing. We can also add in some olives as well. And then we have our protein pasta dish that is easy to prep that we can take with us. Same thing with our dinner is that we can turn that into stir fry. We can also go and we can make this into a burrito bowl as well. Now, I also wanted to point this out for how this would look for like a performance meal plan. In a performance meal plan, we're focusing more on the different types of foods and the nutrients that they provide to us based off of our workouts and our dietary needs. The breakfast example that I provide here would be something that we would end up making at home. Reason being, nobody wants to reheat eggs in an office space. So for breakfast, we can do our eggs, potato, our green peppers, and our onions and our mushrooms, and make our own little skillet or have our own little breakfast bowl. It's very low GI. It'll break down very slowly. It'll keep you full until lunch, and it'll keep your cortisol and your insulin levels down in the morning time. The next one that we have is going to be lunch. Same thing is that we have a different variety, and that's the big thing here is variety of our fruits and our vegetables, and also our grain sources. But it's another one that's going to be surrounded around protein and have those grains and keep us fuller longer while also being able to eat it on the go. Now, the pre-workout here is before your workout, you want to think about what is going to be most readily utilized by the body, which means a carbohydrate that breaks down quickly, a fat, and then a protein that breaks down quickly. Now, for this protein or for this meal timing for your workout can be anywhere between 2 hours to even just walking into the door of the gym, and it very much depends on person to person. But regardless of when you decide to eat your pre-workout meal, you'd want to think what's going to break down quickly. And in this situation, we look at more of those rice cakes, honey, fruit for that. And it's also not going to sit very heavy in your stomach. And then for your post-workout, you'd want to have, again, just like breakfast, a low GI, something that breaks down slowly. So that way it's going to help to replenish that muscle glycogen that's stored, that again, glycogen is stored in our muscles, and helped with that protein synthesis to help to build that lean muscle mass. And yes, it is more than all right to eat before bed, and because our bodies don't just shut off, they're still going. And if we find that our sleep is getting disrupted, then we just make that meal a little bit smaller. But we still want to make sure that we're eating after our workouts. Now, this can also transfer over with the same mentality of going out to eat. And when we go out to eat, it would be more of that intuitive eating, recognizing the food groups on the plate and the nutrients that they're provided to you, and still recognizing and selecting things around the protein first, and then the grain, and then the fruits and the vegetables that are there. Now, traditionally, when we're going out to breakfast or going out to brunch, we want to look at omelets, traditional breakfasts, or different skillets. Why? Because they're always going to have more food groups for you to provide more nutrients to your body. Rather than if we did a pancake or a waffle, well, it's not bad. It's just it's just going to be a grain, or it's just going to be a carbohydrate, or it's going to be a higher GI and break down very quickly and leave you feeling hungry within an hour. In terms of lunch, I always will recommend that you do salads, sandwiches, wraps, or bowls for that same exact reasoning of that they have more food groups, they have more vegetables, they have more protein to it. So you're providing more nutrients that will also digest well within your body. In terms of dinners and going out to eat, traditionally it's recommended that you do steak, seafood, chicken, and salads because that's going to end up having more benefits to your body and it'll be higher in fat for yourself. Moving on, we're looking at the different on-the-go snacks. You want to recognize it for exactly what it is, and that is items that are just that component. They are just a protein. They are just a grain. They are just a fruit or a vegetable. And I say this because if you're going on a road trip, you might only be stopping at a gas station. So we would want to go and say, I'm going into a gas station and I'm going to grab trail mix for my fats, or I'm going to grab a banana for my fruit and maybe a protein shake for my protein, or beef jerky for my protein, and then I'm going to grab pretzels for my green. And while these would never be things that I would structure meals around normally, it still allows you to get those nutrients from yourself and recognize them for what they are. Now, the other one is that when it comes to those proteins, in terms of like protein drinks and protein shakes, it's still remembering that they are exactly that. They are a supplement. When you are deficient in something, we want to be able to supplement that. So we would reach for that in quick instances And then we can also use it as just that extra component if we find that we don't get enough. So this brings us to the end of our PowerPoint presentation on the food groups and how that looks for meal planning. In our next video, we are going to discuss a little bit more on tracking in terms of calories and how that would look from person to person.